I think the Tyquan Thornton pick was bizarre. I mean, that's just the way to put it. I mean, he is someone who got drafted nearly 100 picks ahead of where he was on the consensus big board. This is what Belichick does. Belichick does not care about the consensus big board. I don't think he has ever paid attention to that. He's not afraid to take a chance and grab a guy who he likes, and it has definitely worked out in the past. Also has had its misses in the past, especially at the wide receiver positions. So let's talk about Thornton. And again, one thing I say with the Patriots is like, I acknowledge that what they do typically works. So I'm not going to, I'm probably going to be wrong about, something like this. But I also, if I don't love the prospect and feel like it's a reach, I am still going to criticize it no matter who makes the selection. I don't care if it's the greatest head coach of all time, who I think is a really underrated general manager, does a great job at finding these, hidden gems that end up being awesome. Like Belichick does an incredible job at that. And so maybe he feels that guy is Thornton. But if I watched Thornton and didn't love his film, I'm still going to say it. Now, there's things I like about it, and we'll get into what I like about him. Again, my whole thing about this draft was the Patriots could have drafted a better prospect in round one and still probably gotten all these guys anyways, just by waiting. But still, let's talk about Thornton himself. They're the definite positives that you will see on film and some negatives as well. Let's start off with a positive. Let's start off with something like this. This is what really they're drafting Thornton for, is someone who can win on the outside. Because that's something they didn't really have last year, and it's tough because NFL games are typically won on the outside in today's day and age. So you got to have guys who can win on the outside and win on the outside consistently. This is part of why they added Devontae Parker and part of why they're going out and drafting Thornton. As you see, watch how Thornton does sort of get to the outside right there, and he's able to blow by the defensive back. And listen, having speed, and especially if you have a good first step while having speed, that is going to come into play in a big way, and that is something that can really work at the NFL level. My issue, though, is stuff like this, because again, that last play, okay, yeah, awesome, and that would happen at times for sure. My issue is that's kind of all that he would do. That's a big part of where his wins came from, is what I would say. Because you have stuff like this where it's going to be a one-on-one matchup. I've circled him and the defensive back who's covering him in this man coverage scenario one-on-one. He's going to be running a route over the middle, so that's how this is going to work. And as you see, when he does cut over the middle, doesn't get much separation, which is fine, right? Okay, you're not going to win every single rep, but that's kind of my main issue with Thornton, is you look at his highlights and you're like, oh, this guy's awesome. Of course they drafted him in, the second round. Oh, he's totally worth a top 50 pick. The issue is he just really struggled to win consistently, is what I thought. Like this one's another one where, again, you see where he is on the field. It's going to be a one-on-one matchup, and watch what happens. Look, as you see, again, just not going to get much separation whatsoever. The ball doesn't come his way, and it shouldn't have came his way because he was not open. And again, I want to preface all of this by saying evaluating wide receivers is hard. You're not going to win every single matchup. It's entirely dependent sometimes on what defense you're going up against. All of that stuff is absolutely true. Again, something like this, another example where you see where he is on the field. It's again going to be a one-on-one matchup, and watch what happens. Look, Thornton's going to run his route and just not get any separation whatsoever, and it leads to an interception. So you gotta be better than that. You just do. I mean, that's just kind of the reality of the situation, is if you're going to be someone who is drafted when you're drafted, I would like to see you be getting open more consistently. That's kind of the way I view it. N'Keal Harry didn't get open consistently. I said, oh yeah, but look at the positives. And since then I've said, okay, I need to reevaluate how I evaluate receivers. He is the kind of guy who, again, I'm not saying he's N'Keal Harry by any means, but just he didn't win enough for me. Again, there was stuff like this, and I want to be clear, like he's a fine, like third round, maybe fourth round wide receiver, in my opinion. Probably fourth round is where I would have him. So, again, he was the 150th rated receiver. So that's actually maybe even a bit complimentary. The way this play works is it's going to be a zone coverage play, and you see he's running an out route. And this is how he got his wins at Baylor. It was a lot of, he has this incredible speed, which is true and will work at the NFL level to some degree. Again, having him is going to be an important piece to this offense, and at some point he is going to have a big touchdown probably. So there's absolutely value in having Thornton. I'm not saying that he's an invaluable player. But it felt like a lot of his wins where he would either blow by defensive backs, or then when, defensive backs were afraid of getting blown by, he would just run something underneath that could get open. Watch how you're going to see him just, cut, and he is going to get open because of how far off that defensive back was playing, because you have to be afraid of the deep pass, which is a great asset, and that's something that can really work at, especially at the college level. But at the NFL level, when guys are faster, they still might not be as fast as Thornton, but it just might not be as big of a jump, which is where, it can work out for someone like, it can result in some bust, but can also result in him being good. So it can go both ways. Again, I want to be very clear here. Thornton to the Patriots makes them not a lot better, but it makes them better. It is a good selection to take him. It's smart to go out and get someone like him because he does bring something to the offense that I think they're lacking. I think this is something that they could use. I feel like they thought that they were going to get this with Aguilar a little bit in kind of a different way. And Aguilar, again, has shown some flashes, but has always had an inconsistency problem, whereas someone like Thornton might be able to be someone who can win on the outside consistently. I'm sure that, with that speed, he can probably play good special teams, which we know Belichick values highly, but he was the 146th rated prospect on the consensus big board. The reality is guys that are in that spot basically never succeed. And that's just a reality situation. Last year, the player who was selected at 146 was Shakir Brown, a cornerback who ended up going undrafted. So that's what we're dealing with. I know that, and typically when you have reaches, this is something I keep bringing up, the history of the NFL shows when there is an insane reach, what the player ends up being is a lot closer to their consensus big board ranking than where they actually got selected. So I know that I know that there's always going to be reports, well, they wouldn't have got him in round 3 because X team, also really liked him, which is maybe true. We don't know. But I guess what I always feel like is you shouldn't fall that in love with your own evaluation. Yes, it's okay if you like someone, but if most people don't think that they're that good, there's a good chance that the consensus is correct, not that you are correct. That's kind of how I view about this. It's not to say that you should never reach. I think reaching at times is fine, but only at times. And to me, this did feel like a reach because I just don't love Thornton's game, really. I don't know how well it translates to the NFL level. It might. Again, I'm not saying he's a trash player. I say he's like a 4th-round talent. That's not bad. 4th-round talents. 4th-round receivers come in and have impacts all the time. I mean, undrafted receivers come in and have impacts all the time. He will have an impact. The issue is, I just felt like it was a reach. I just did. I thought he got overdrafted. That's kind of how I view it. Not to say he's a bad player, and I'm sure he'll help the Patriots. And I thought they had some interesting picks later on, but I'm just not a fan of this strategy. That's really what it comes down to. I think it's a bad team-building strategy to go out and do stuff like this, and I don't see it. Maybe I'm wrong. Part of this is an evaluation thing because I just don't see it. Which, listen, I've been wrong before, right? People, I'm sure, in the comments will bring up times I've missed on receivers before, which is fair. Receiver and quarterback are the 2 most difficult positions to evaluate. That and, to a lesser extent, corner. At least with corner, there are things you can look at, like 40 time, that tends to do a pretty good job of predicting success. But for receivers, there is nothing like that. 40 time does not predict success the way that it does for corners. That position in quarterback, production doesn't seem to matter. It's all just tape and evaluating that way, and that makes it really difficult. So because of that, I definitely acknowledge I could be wrong, and he could end up being awesome. Maybe I misevaluated him. But for the things that I look for in wide receivers that I've seen translate to the NFL pretty effectively, I don't know if he really has those things, and this feels like an overdraft. But that's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.